What should you absolutely not do at a wedding? My uncle Rob got married at the same place to two different women about 15 years apart. My father says, "Hey Rob, after the third time do you get your own parking space or something?" The bride's family were least impressed. Getting stupidly drunk and lifting up the bride's skirt while the groom is going for the garter thing on her leg. Puking all over the DJ's soundboard and in his bag. Almost starting a fist fight with childhood friends. My friend Jorge did all this at my buddy's wedding. It's all on tape. Do not bring up the subject of the groom's ex-wife, especially in a speech. I witnessed a terrible best man speech where he basically bashed the groom's prior marriage and said that he hoped this one turned out better. It was a truly painful speech. Have a ridiculously expensive wedding at a resort and expect all guests to front the cost. My wife and I were invited to a couple's wedding in Jamaica. The cost per person was $1,000 for 4 days, not including food or airfare, during a busy tourist season. It was also a themed wedding, and not a fun theme like Renaissance garb, but some kind of Italian clothing where everyone had to match. You had to show up to some place, get fitted for the style, and buy the suit or dress. For a guy it was about $350, but depending on the women's size, up to $1,200 for a dress. I have no idea how much a bridesmaid or usher had to pay. This was just to be a guest. We declined, along with the majority of those invited. The bride gave everyone a hard time, especially because the $1,000 person was only if some minimum purchased was reached. The fact we wouldn't pay meant others would be forced to pay more. I just didn't have the estimated $5,000 plus time off work to go. They had the wedding anyway, but out of several hundred they planned for, 30 came. The groom had to change his best man twice because his first two couldn't pay the steep fees required. This was flaunted as well. Now we know who our real friends are. Marriage lasted 7 months. I forgot why they split up. A true story. Groom had a previous fiancée who died suddenly and accidentally before they could get married. Very sad, tragic. She was a sweet girl and everyone loved her. One of those whole town turned out for the funeral sort of things. Anyway. Fast forward a few years, and groom has met a new girl. She's a good person, but she's not from the small town that the former fiancé was from, and everyone sort of already has it out for her. New girl is big city, has a little edge to her. Old girl, small town girl next door. No matter what, the new girl will never ever be as good as the old girl. So, at the wedding, the sister of the groom, who is a bridesmaid, offers a toast in remembrance of the dead fiancé. It was among the least classy, shocking things I had ever seen, and the sister was absolutely clueless about what she'd done. Long story short, don't ever talk about the bride or groom's exe they saints, sinners, living or dead. The wedding day is about the couple, and not their past relationships. My mother-in-law stood up at my wedding reception and said this marriage between Henry and what's-her-name is never going to last. I am what's-her-name. Don't do that. I'm still angry 13 years later. I'm a divorce attorney. I've been told not to hand out business cards at weddings. Give a rude toast insulting the bride or groom. Edit changed bridge to bride, because everyone knows not to insult a bridge. Pick up all the flowers the flower girl drops. Start a toast with Webster's defines marriage. When they are exchanging the rings, don't stand up, dressed as Sauron and say but they were, all of them, deceived, for another ring was made. Whilst putting on a ring too. Grill the bride and groom about when they are having children. I'm paying for your drinks. Is it that hard to just say congratulations? Be an iPad videographer while standing in the middle of the aisle. Happened at my buddy's wedding last week. They had a professional videographer and this guy thought he was doing a service to the couple. He watched the entire wedding through his iPad. Edit spelling edit too. I love that everyone is concerned with what he's wearing. It was a beach wedding that was crazy hot and humid and we all wore shorts and sandals. Let's focus on the bigger issue here. People put the device down and be present on their special day. Also wanna add show up if you didn't RSVP said you weren't coming. And more importantly, do not bring a date if your invite didn't say and guest. If you really think your new boyfriend of 6 whole weeks should be invited to your second cousin's big day, ask the couple before assuming and just showing up with another person. Organize a wager amongst the guests. They can bet how many weeks the marriage will last. Side bets with who's going to cheat first are included. Make sure everyone has a chance to bet, including the bride and groom. Get in the photographer's way, or take your own flash photos during the ceremony. I once photographed a wedding and during the family photographs with the bride and groom, the bride's mother and father were put on opposite sides because they were divorced and not behaving. The mother was drunk and during the photo she was yelling over the heads of the bride and groom insulting her ex-husband. The bride was near tears and we had to stop taking pictures until they could get the mother to calm down. It was the last wedding I ever photographed. Wear a white dress. If you are a bride or a groom, don't make a scene. It will be what nearly everyone remembers about your wedding if you do. My wife and I had a small ceremony with just our parents and my sister and her husband. We were in a small dining room for the reception and the AC had broken earlier in the day. They had repaired it in time for dinner, but it was taking a while to cool down. The parents started getting ornery, but some strong drinks later we were all laughing, dancing, and sweating up a storm. Talking with the family later, they were all surprised that my wife or I didn't pitch a huge fit about the temperature. They were pleased too, as it would have been the only hitch in an otherwise awesome day. On the other hand, my sister and her husband were married and had a cousin announce her pregnancy over the microphone after dinner. My sister tried to ask her quietly to just leave, but she made a scene before doing so. Then the groom's best man got into a fight with his fiancée and she tried to drive off crying but backed into a tree. She was sober. The fiancé was belligerently drunk and threatening to fight people to get him outside to cool off, so the groom tossed a bucket of ice water on him. Despite that, rest of the wedding, reception, and day being fine, that is all people remember. I'm from a very, very conservative background. I wore a halter top dress but had a jacket over it. But the best man's family gossiped at my wedding about how horribly immodest my dress was. Basically called me a slut. Don't call the bride a slut. Even if you think it. Keep your mouth shut. Just for reference, get drunk and blurt out something like I slept with your wife. Drink a quart of whiskey before the ceremony. Refuse to put on a shirt during the ceremony and then sit in your car and blast techno the whole time because you were asked to leave. Someone did this at a wedding I was at on Saturday. Ridiculous, no one has said it yet. Leave your phone on loud. Never stop the ceremony to propose to your girlfriend. Sure, you'll have free pictures and video of it, but everyone will be pissed at you forever. I attended a wedding for a friend a couple summers ago. His best man, who was extremely intoxicated, got up to give his best man speech. We were all nervous about it already, but when he blurted out, "You know, me and your wife, we have a past." No, dear God, abort. Me and some friends were camping on the lake for the weekend of a wedding and one of them didn't pack nice pants or a belt. He wore a dress shirt that he apparently dropped in the road while unloading our stuff because we found it hanging on the outhouse the next morning. He then proceeded to get drunk the night before the wedding, run straight for the lake and trip over a stump, smashing his face into a fence post. So for the wedding he showed up with a shoestring belt, dirty shirt, a massive black eye, and on top of that he accidentally brought 2 dates to the wedding. Don't do any of these things. That being said, I'm glad he did. Become a drunk enough adult to the point where you start making weird comments to underage girls. I had a bad experience as an underage girl. Use your best man speech to propose to your girlfriend. It's not your time in the spotlight, fucker. If you are a bride, don't hold any babies. They are going to shit, piss, vomit, bleed, cry all over you. Edit piss, not puss. I'm getting married next year and I would really love it if nobody throws up anywhere. Don't do this. Anything that makes you the center of attention. This is about the couple's day and nobody else's. You want to propose to your girlfriend? Save it for the jumbotron. Want to give a clever asshole speech and then strip of your tear-away clothes and go streaking? Save it for graduation. Dying of a heart attack? Just sit in a corner and at least try to pretend you are British and slip off your mortal coil quietly and with dignity. At my brother's wedding, the bride's sister, the maid of honor, threw a huge fucking tantrum and put the bride's veil in the bathroom trash can right before the ceremony was supposed to start. So, there's that. True story here, folks. I'm sad I'm commenting so late because this will probably get buried. Don't bring random not significant partners to your friend's wedding. When I got married, one of our groomsmen asked to bring the girl he had recently started dating. A real beast of a woman. We said okay. She got so drunk at the reception, and managed to sneak into almost every picture our photographer got. She was loud, she was smoking the whole time, just generally very annoying. The real kicker is, a few years later, long after they had broken up, our friend bumped into her brother. He asked how she was doing. Brother's response? Not good, man, she's in jail for life. She murdered our mother. And that is how I came to have a murderer in my wedding photos. Don't be late, and if you are, don't get mad if they carried on without you. My BFF's mother told me her wedding had a strict start time. She kept to it, as she and her husband were leaving. A few ants were just walking in. Lol. Instead of untying the little bag of birdseed and showering the bride and groom, toss the whole thing and have it land in the bride's cleavage. I was a kid and didn't know the tradition. When the minister says if anyone knows of any reason these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. Don't roll 2d20s on a wooden pew. It echoes terribly loud when no one is talking. If you're the groom, during the handover, do not say to the father, "Thank you, sir, may I have another?" Expect to get laid if you're single. Wedding Crashers is a lie. Weddings are 99.9 couples and old people. Stick your finger in the cake. Say fuck or goddamn in a best man speech when my wife's Christian family including a pastor is in attendance. My best man started his speech with goddamn man, it's your fucking day man, it's your fucking day. Who knew he could say so many wrong things in one sentence? Convince someone to cut a slice of cake before the bridegroom have cut it. The bride. Propose to your girlfriend, while you're in someone else's wedding reception. You, sir, are a douchebag if you do this. Edit. I'm getting a lot of comments about how it's okay as long as you have asked for permission from the bride and groom beforehand. While that may sound fine, personally, I think you should still avoid doing this because, well, it's just in bad taste. Pick your own special day and let the newlyweds enjoy theirs. Dress up in white Batman costume and being a douche throughout the ceremony. Take a nuclear shit in the bathroom of the bridal suite where the newlyweds will spend their first night of married life together, an hour before the ceremony. Oh, and having a nap on the giant bed too, without making the sheets. My wife still hasn't forgiven you, Adam. Request the DJ play the Reigns of Castamere. If you're the father of the bride, don't bring up in the speech that you thought your daughter was a lesbian for X amount of years. This happened at my so's cousin's wedding and was awkward for everyone in the vicinity. Don't call out the groom's mentally handicapped sister for not being dressing up. This happened at my wedding, and people didn't realize that it was just a battle to get her there in the first place because she doesn't like large crowds of people. A good chunk of our guests publicly shamed her for how she was dressed and that ruined the whole event for my husband. Tell the bride's sister that her toddler looks just like the groom. Actually happened last Sunday. Propose to your girlfriend. Source saw it happen once. Did not end well. If your sibling is getting married and you fly in for the wedding, do not refuse to take family pictures. You are family and you should take pictures. After you are forced to be in, take pictures by your father who has to tell you to be part of the family, don't say the following: that was torturous or I fucking hate weddings in front of your siblings' new in-laws. You will look like a brat and, no, unlike your father and mother, the new in-laws will not defend your behavior. And, finally, get off your goddamn phone. It looks really disrespectful in pictures. TLDR got married on Sunday and Syl was a brat. Luckily, the wedding was a huge success and she didn't ruin the day. Added to be clear, family pictures were before the ceremony and reception. If she didn't want to take pictures, she just didn't have to show. Edit 2 wording. Edit 3 This just in, it seems my photographer was asked by her to take pictures of her and her aunt which are on my proof CD. So. Yeah. Not anxiety, just a brat. Things I have actually seen happen. If you are one of the very few women invited to the bachelorette party, do not drunkenly admit that you had a giant crush on the groom for years during the roast. Groom had been with his bride that entire time. Do not attempt to invite random townies to your friend's wedding that you met the night before at the bachelorette party. Do not get so drunk during the reception that the bride needs to shuffle you onto the bus to get your ass home. Do not get so drunk that someone calls an ambulance for you. Give the groom a blowjob right before the ceremony, even if it's a good way for him to calm the fuck down. Also, don't mention to the bride that you did it when you see her in the receiving line. Definitely not a good idea. Do not empty out the gigantic hollowed-out watermelon serving as a fruit buffet, put it on your head, and lead a drunken, fruit-just-smeared conga line around the entire reception room when the bride's party are basically Italian mafia and staring at you in abject loathing. Get drunk and tell the bride that the husband cheated on her when they were dating. Did not end well for me or the groom. Don't pay a naked dwarf to jump out of the It's That Kind of Wedding. Roast the groom when you give a speech. That's what the stag was for. The wedding is a show, and everybody gets to pretend that the couple is perfect and the marriage is going to last. Damn, it's probably too late for this but I'll post it anyway. Don't show up in the background of all of their pictures trying to take your own cell phone photos. Trust me, we paid that guy thousands of dollars to take photos at our wedding. Your cell phone shot isn't going to upstage him, and seriously. You ruined several of our photos, Kyle. And then he never even emailed the photos he took to us. Fucking Kyle. Photo for example. Do not have your bachelor stag bachelorette hen party the night before the wedding. Stand up when they ask if anyone objects and yell out, "I do," then storm up the aisle, and as soon as you reach the bride and groom, turn around and yell, "Psych." In your first dance, hire ninjas to take your bride away and then fight them off with aimed low kicks, all with Mortal Kombat music playing overhead. My GF went to a wedding where the bride and groom did a 50-50 raffle for their own benefit, audibly laughing when they say the bridesmaid's name Jenny Sharts. Do anything to upstage the bride, or somehow attempt to redirect attention onto you. It's their day. Wedding musician here. The best cringeworthy story was a gig where the bride was known as quite the lover that is finally settling down. The best man toast focused on this as she was proclaimed as unavailable. The men were encouraged to return the key to her apartment. Man after man, head down, went up and deposited a key in a hat. It didn't get weird until the end when an elderly man with a walker slowly went up. After him, a very young boy bounced up to the astonishment of most of the gathering. That was over 18 years ago. I still remember it. I play every breath you take, goddammit, listen the fucking words. My grandfather stood up and announced 5 minutes before my parents' wedding that he was leaving my grandmother after 35 years, offerings B, marrying my grandmother's best friend after having had an affair with her for the past 8 years, and C, wanted to invite everyone to the wedding seeing as how everyone was already together and in one place for an easy announcement. Then my mother began walking down the aisle. So basically, don't do that. Shots of Jameson and slam dance with the Irish priest to jump around while the bride is waiting on the altar. Lob grenades into the crowd. By all means, joke about objecting to the marriage before the wedding. But do not joke about doing that shit hours before the wedding. People need to learn to take a joke. You should not leave your wolf companion outside. Talk about the three-way you had with the bride. When I was 10 years old, I went to my cousin's wedding. There were trays of lace-wrapped rice tied up into little balls that were tied off with bows. They were about the size of hacky sacks. I asked my dad what they were for and he just said you throw it at the bride and groom as they are leaving. Well, as soon as the doors opened and they were leaving the church, I threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball of rice and nailed my cousin in the eye. She dropped to the ground and started crying and screaming, and my dad smacked me upside the head almost simultaneously. Not my finest moment. My parents were divorced when I was 15. I went to live with my father. I visited my mother a year or twice a year. My mother and I are not really close. A year ago, a friend of mine at the last minute asked me to accompany him to a wedding as his +1. His other +1 unable to make it. I went into my horror. The bride is my mother. Have George R.R. Martin be the wedding planner. Invite a groom or bride's ex.